this lab, I wanted to first start by showing you how to connect the arm. Now you'll find this in the front of the box with all the rest of this kit. And this is used whenever you use the velocity sensor and the stand. The reason for that is you want your sensor to be at the base here for your measurements. So you're gonna hold this so that way there's a hole at the bottom, and that's gonna be on this side right here. And you'll find a hole at the bottom of your sensor that will connect to. You should find this small blue screw in the box with the velocity sensor. So you'll connect him up there. Tighten that. And you'll see the arm is like supporting the back of the velocity sensor. And now back here with the velocity sensor, you've got a hole that you'll do attach just as you normally would to your stand. And there you go. Now your velocity sensor is all hooked up. And you are set to go. Otherwise this was gonna bump up against that and it just wasn't gonna work. Okay, so now that we're all set up, we've got our car. He's gonna sit up at the top of the track using this. For the first part of the lab, you wanna hook up to your Photogate. And so you're going to be using your CPO timer mode. This part of the lab is not too difficult. Students are going to be, and if you want to take off this part for this part of the lab, you can, or see if you can't leave it attached. I'm not sure how it would interact there at the bottom. I think actually you need it off for down the end of the track. But your students are going to be taking different speed measurements. Well, they'll be taking time measurements and converting it to speed. And so they'll pick different spots for this to be at. So after they get this, they'll get their time, mark where the Photogate was positioned at, and then mark what the time was. I have students fill all that out first, and then they'll do the calculation for velocity. So they've run a trial, go ahead and move this guy down. I believe it says move it 10 centimeters at a time. So I moved it from 40 to 50. So that's the first part of the lab. You'll have to remind students that if you want to find velocity, you do 1 centimeter divided by whatever your time was. Because that flag, let's talk about that again. Because this flag, this is the only part of the car that actually breaks the Photogate's laser, is 1 centimeter. So that's your distance that the time ran for. So remind students of that. I explained that more in one of the earlier chapter 1 videos. Then for part, well, you'll ask some questions for part 2, but part 3, that's when you're gonna switch it from using a Photogate, so you'll no longer need those. You can unhook them, and you're gonna hook up to your velocity sensor. And you can jump out of that mode. And then you're just gonna want your students to follow all the directions. They're actually gonna go back into the data collection, which we did before. There's a slight setup difference for this one. So for samples, and this picture is correct, the last one had an error. So we're gonna do 50 samples at a rate of 20 again. So this is gonna be about 2.5 seconds. For your SA, so over on the left, SA, we want to measure distance in centimeters, and SA again is gonna measure speed in centimeters per second, okay? I would just have them follow this, make sure that they're both SA, saying that this A sensor is measuring both distance and speed. Okay, so we're gonna set up our car, make sure that he's got our little sensor there on the back. I'm going to hold him steady. This is where assigning different students different roles is gonna be super helpful. You see I'm struggling here, trying to do everything. I'm gonna hit go, and remember it does a countdown, so they have to wait. And yeah, it's gonna kick off there. You might have a student down at the end catch the car so it doesn't knock off that back end of it constantly. All right, so now when they look at their data table, you'll actually have more columns because you have your distance and your velocity.
Oh, okay.
I'm recording a bit
in
second.
here.
And then you also have your graph here. So let's jump into there, see what that looks like. And you'll have 2 different lines here. You'll see that this first part here was probably my car before I let go. And then it started taking samples. Let's see here. Y1 should be my zoom in. Oh, there we go. Zooming in super helped. So make sure that you do that on yours. Zooming in is going to help you see it a little bit better, a lot less fluctuations. My car is not moving, and you should have a straight line curve. That's my velocity. It's Y2, and that's from our setup. Y1 is my distance, and this is where they'll see your distance is a curved line because we're accelerating. Your velocity is a constantly increasing line. So that's actually some good data for students to start looking at. Okay, and then basically students are going to be breaking that down. What does that all mean? Answering questions. You might have to do a couple samples till you get something like this. Actually, that was a good little tip for zooming in to actually get really good data. You can full screen it. For those of you that love breaking down graphs, having students understand what they're looking at, this is beautiful. All right, that is Lab Investigation 2.2.